On my 18th birthday, there wasn't a cake, no presents, not even a happy birthday. Instead, my adoptive parents handed me a black garbage bag full of my clothes, and then told me something that shattered everything I thought I knew about my life. "We only adopted you for the government money," my mom said. She was holding a calculator, fingers tapping away like she was doing the math on 18 years of profit. $1,500 a month, Logan. You've been a steady paycheck, but now that you're 18, the money stops coming in. My name's Logan Hayes, or at least, that's the name I've been answering to for the last 18 years. The woman talking to me is Marissa Hayes, the only mom I've ever had. She's 52, works as a bank teller, and apparently thinks of me as some kind of long-term investment that just reached maturity. Next to her sat my dad. Well, the man I'd always called Dad, Stanley Hayes. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He never did when things got tense. He manages stock at a hardware store, and he's the one who taught me how to fix engines, though now I realize he probably did it just to keep me occupied, not because he cared. "You're kidding, right?" I managed to say, my voice barely hanging on. "It's my birthday. You're really dropping this on me today?" Stanley shifted in his chair, the same creaky wooden chair he'd sat in through 18 years of quiet dinners. "The adoption payments in when you turn 18, he said softly. "That was the agreement." "The agreement?" My knees felt weak. "I'm your son. I'm not some deal you signed." Marissa finally looked up from her calculator. Her gray eyes were as cold and flat as they'd always been, but now I understood why. "No, Logan," she said evenly. "You were a ward of the state. We agreed to provide housing, food, and education in exchange for compensation. That arrangement is complete." She stood and walked to the corner of the kitchen, where a black garbage bag leaned against the white wall like a tumor. "Your belongings are in here," she continued. "Personal items only. Anything purchased with our money stays." I watched her hands, the same hands that used to pack my school lunches. I'd once thought that meant she cared. Now I realized she'd just been following state guidelines. The same hands that had signed every report card without once asking how I was doing. The same hands that had never hugged me, not once, in 18 years. "You have until noon to leave," Marissa said, sitting back down. "That gives you 2 hours and 13 minutes to make arrangements." Stanley finally spoke, his voice a whisper. "Marissa, maybe we can give him a few days." She cut him off with that look, the one that always shut him down. "The mortgage is due tomorrow, Stanley. We're listing the room on local exchange today. Someone already called about it." "You're renting out my room?" I could barely breathe. "You already have someone lined up?" "It's not your room," Marissa said, cool as ever. "It never was. You were a long-term guest, and your stay is over." I stood in the same kitchen where I'd eaten 18 years of meals, staring at the people I'd called Mom and Dad. The ones I'd made Father's Day cards for, tried to make proud, hoped would someday say they loved me. Stanley wouldn't look up. Marissa was already punching more numbers into her calculator, like evicting me was just another Tuesday morning task. "I don't have anywhere to go," I said quietly. "I've got $47 in my wallet. What am I supposed to do?" Marissa reached into her folder. Of course she had a folder, and pulled out a pamphlet. She had probably been planning this for weeks. "There's a shelter downtown," she said, flipping it open. "They take adults 18 and older. The address is highlighted. A homeless shelter." The woman who'd raised me since I was 3 months old was handing me directions to a homeless shelter like she was giving me a recipe. "Please," I said, and even though I'd hate myself later for begging, I couldn't stop. "Just give me a week. I'll figure something out. I'll pay rent." "With what money?" she asked flatly. "Your part-time garage job? 30 hours at minimum wage won't cover rent." She was right. She was always right about the math. I'd been saving for community college, $800 total. Not even enough for a deposit anywhere. Stanley stood suddenly, unable to sit through any more of it. "I'm going to work," he mumbled, grabbing his keys. He hesitated at the door, hand on the knob. "Good luck, Logan." Then the door shut. His truck started outside, and I was alone, with Marissa, her calculator, and a garbage bag full of my life. "The clock's ticking," she said without looking up. "I have errands at 11:30. The house will be locked when I leave." I walked to the bag and lifted it. It was so light it barely felt real. 18 years of my life, and it all fit in one plastic sack. I looked inside, some clothes, a few books, my toothbrush, the cheap watch my boss gave me for Christmas. Nothing from them. No photos. No keepsakes. No sign I'd ever belonged here. Was I ever anything to you? I asked, even though I knew she wouldn't answer. In 18 years, did you ever feel anything at all? She finally met my eyes. For a split second, something flickered there, something human. But then she glanced at her watch, quick and efficient, like always. You were a responsibility we handled properly, Marissa said. We never hit you, never neglected you, never broke the terms of our agreement with the state. That should be enough. But it wasn't enough. It never would be. Standing there with a garbage bag holding everything I owned, I realized something awful. Some people can raise a child for 18 years without ever once seeing them as a person. To them, you're just a payment schedule. Goodbye, Marissa, I said. It was the first time I'd ever used her name instead of Mom. She was already bent over her calculator again, adding up something new, ready to move on with her tidy, predictable life now that the inconvenience of raising someone else's kid was over. Growing up in the Hayes household in suburban Dallas wasn't terrible, but it wasn't warm either. I thought it was normal. Every family has its quirks, right? That's what I told myself whenever Marissa introduced me at her bank's Christmas parties as Logan, our adopted son, hitting that word adopted like it was part of my official title. Stanley would just nod beside her, sipping his watery beer, never stepping in to say, he's our son. They took me in when I was 3 months old. I don't know the full story, just that I was a ward of the state, and they were foster-to-adopt parents approved through the system. Marissa kept all the paperwork locked away in a metal filing cabinet in their bedroom. I saw her open it twice in 18 years. Both times, she slammed it shut the second she noticed me watching, like I'd caught her counting money she didn't want to explain. Our house was plain but spotless. 3 bedrooms, beige walls, beige carpet, beige curtains. Marissa said neutral tones were cost-effective and timeless. Color, in her opinion, was a waste of money. She bought generic everything and refused to heat the house above 68. Sweaters exist for a reason, she'd say, as if comfort was a moral weakness. Every decision in that house had to pass through her filter of maximum savings, minimum waste. Stanley was the practical one. He taught me how to fix things, change oil, replace spark plugs, patch drywall, repair a leaky faucet. A man needs to know how to fix stuff, he'd say, handing me a wrench. But he never let me touch his pride and joy, a 1969 Mustang he kept covered in the garage. Not for kids, he'd tell me, even when I was 17 and practically running the auto shop where I worked. I get it now. I was never going to be old enough, because I was never really his. There was a locked room in the basement that should have tipped me off. They said it was for storage, but sometimes I'd hear Marissa down there, her voice low, talking on the phone about numbers. Always numbers. As a kid, I thought maybe she was doing some kind of side work for the bank. Now I know better. She was probably talking to caseworkers, confirming deposits, managing her investment. School was my escape. I wasn't the smartest or the most popular, just average enough to stay off everyone's radar. Teachers liked me because I stayed quiet and did my work. Other kids tolerated me because I could fix their beat-up cars in the school parking lot for cheap. I had a few people I'd eat lunch with, but no one I'd call real friends. I never invited anyone over. Our house wasn't built for company. It felt more like a museum. Everything clean, everything in order, but no warmth anywhere. When I turned 16, I got a job at Whitaker Auto Works. Old man Whitaker was a retired Navy mechanic, late 70s, covered in tattoos, and could diagnose an engine problem just by listening to it. He paid me cash at first, then officially once I turned 17. You got good hands, kid, he'd tell me. Steady and patient. Hard to find that these days. Every dollar I earned went straight into savings, though Marissa made sure I didn't keep much. Once I started working, she started charging me household fees. $50 for higher utilities, $30 for wear and tear, $25 for what she called administrative overhead, which I guess meant the time she spent driving me to work before I got my license. She even had an itemized list typed up and taped to the fridge. Of course she did. I paid for my own clothes at Goodwill, my own school supplies, and my prepaid phone plan. Builds character, Marissa would say. Stanley said nothing, which was pretty much his default response to everything. There were only 3 photos of me in the house, all of them staged. One from when I was 5, wearing an itchy suit at Marissa's cousin's wedding. One from middle school graduation because the school required it. And one from my 16th birthday at the DMV, holding up my new license. Marissa kept those photos tucked away in a drawer, not hanging anywhere. The walls were filled with cheap framed art from HomeGoods, generic flowers, mountain scenes, city skylines. Nothing personal. Nothing that said, "A family lives here." Dinner was always at 6 sharp. Marissa had a system for everything, including leftovers. Sunday's roast became Monday's sandwiches, then Tuesday's soup, then Wednesday's casserole. She could tell you exactly how many calories per dollar, exactly how much nutrition percent. We ate quietly while the news droned in the background, Stanley occasionally muttering agreement with something political, Marissa cutting her food into perfect, identical bites. When I was about 14, I made the mistake of asking about my biological parents. The whole room froze. "They couldn't take care of you," Marissa said flatly. "We stepped up when others wouldn't. That's all you need to know." Stanley added, without looking at me, "Best not to dig into the past, son." It was one of the few times he'd called me son, like it might mean something. Birthdays were noted, but never celebrated. I'd get a generic card that said "Happy Birthday" printed inside, signed Marissa and Stanley Hayes. Christmas was the same, practical gifts only. Socks, pens, school supplies. One year they gave me a graphing calculator for Christmas because my math class required it. The tree always came down the day after Christmas, January 2nd, sharp. "No sense paying extra for electricity we're not using," Marissa would say. Now, looking back, every memory feels different. Every moment carries the weight of what I know now. The way Marissa tracked every dime spent on me. The way Stanley introduced me as the boy instead of my son. The way they skipped every parent-teacher meeting unless the state made them attend. All those quiet, cut-off conversations I used to overhear weren't secrets about family. They were about money. About me. Here's the strange thing about growing up without love. You don't realize what's missing until you see what it's supposed to look like. I thought every family worked like that. I thought all parents kept spreadsheets. I thought every house felt temporary, like you could be packed up and gone with one phone call. Turns out, I was right about that last part. That morning, Marissa told me to sit down. "Logan, have a seat," she said without looking up from her calculator. The kitchen table was buried under folders, spreadsheets, and bank statements. "Now that you're 18, the checks stopped coming." My stomach dropped like I'd missed the last step on a staircase. "What checks?" Stanley shifted in his chair, the wood creaking under his weight. He was already in his work uniform, probably wishing he could disappear into the hardware store, where everything was easier to count and fix. "The adoption subsidies," Marissa said, her tone flat and professional. $1,500 a month for 18 years. That's why we took you in." The words hit me hard, like physical punches to the chest. $1,500 a month. 18 years. I couldn't stop myself from doing the math, even as my heart broke. $324,000. That's what I'd been worth to them. Marissa didn't even blink. "We've provided what the state required: food, shelter, education. The contract is fulfilled. You'll need to be out by noon." "You're joking," I said, my voice cracking. "This is some kind of birthday prank, right? You'll laugh in a minute. Bring out a cake or something." "The garbage bag has your belongings," Marissa said, pointing with her pen. "Leave your key on the counter. The garage opener, too. And the spare key you made, under the fake rock, right?" Of course she knew. Marissa always knew anything that might affect her money or her control. "I don't understand," I said, though deep down I did. All the little moments, all the things that never quite made sense, they were forming a picture I didn't want to see. "You raised me. I call you mom and dad. How can you just throw me out?" "You're an adult," Marissa replied, finally glancing up. "We have no obligation to keep you here. In fact, if we did, it could complicate our taxes. We've claimed you as a dependent, but now that the subsidies ended, you're a liability, not an asset." That word, liability, stuck in my head. I wasn't their son. I was a used-up investment, something that had outlived its financial value. "Please," I said. I actually dropped to my knees right there on the kitchen floor I'd scrubbed every Saturday for 18 years. "I'll get a full-time job. I'll pay rent. Just give me a month." Stanley turned away, staring at the wall like it had suddenly become fascinating. Marissa pointed at the clock. "It's 9:47. You have until noon. Don't make this harder than it has to be." I stayed kneeling for a while, half a minute, maybe more, waiting for something human to show in their faces. But Marissa just returned to her calculator, and Stanley stepped around me to refill his coffee, like I wasn't even there. When I finally stood, my legs trembled. 18 years, I said. 18 years of calling you my parents. Doesn't that mean anything? You were well cared for, Marissa said. Fed 3 meals a day, dressed properly, educated through the public system, medical and dental care per state requirements. You received everything you were entitled to. What about love? I asked. The words came out quiet, barely a whisper. Her fingers stopped on the calculator keys for 1 second. Love doesn't pay mortgages, Logan. I went to my room, what had been my room. The walls were blank, like they'd always been, because Marissa didn't believe in decorations. Everything inside was plain, functional, probably government issued. My closet was already organized into 2 piles. Clothes I'd bought with my own money went into the garbage bag. Everything they'd purchased stayed. My laptop stayed. It had been a school expense. The alarm clock stayed. It came with the room. Even the baseball glove Stanley bought me at 12 stayed. We'd never played catch once. He'd only bought it because PE required it. I ended up in the bathroom, staring into the mirror. Brown hair, brown eyes, average face, average build. I looked like nobody, and maybe that's why it had been so easy for them. I fit into their beige life too well. I didn't clash with anything. When I came back to the kitchen, Marissa was on the phone. Yes, the room will be available this afternoon, she said. $450 a month, utilities included, first and last month up front. She was already renting out my room while I was still standing there. Not to another foster kid this time, but to a paying tenant. A real asset. Who were my biological parents? I asked. Marissa covered the phone receiver. Does it matter? They gave you up. We're giving you up. Seems consistent to me. You knew who they were? I asked. The state gave us basic medical records for insurance, Marissa said flatly. That's all we needed. Nothing more was relevant to our arrangement. That word hit me, arrangement. That's all my childhood had ever been. Stanley came back from the garage holding a $20 bill. He held it out without looking at me. For food, he muttered. Until you get settled. $20. After $324,000, he was giving me 20. I wanted to throw it in his face, to tell him where to shove it. But I didn't. You can't eat pride. At exactly noon, Marissa appeared in the doorway. Time's up, she said, already holding the door open. We have appointments this afternoon. I picked up the garbage bag, my life in one hand, and hesitated. Did you ever, even once, think of me as your son? Her gray eyes stayed as cold as ever. I thought of you as my responsibility, she said. And I fulfilled that responsibility completely. The door clicked shut behind me, followed by the sound of the deadbolt, then the chain. And that was it. Outside, suburban Dallas kept moving, lawnmowers humming, kids laughing, neighbors waving. Ordinary life, like nothing had happened. I stood on the sidewalk with a trash bag, $20, and nowhere to go. The shelter pamphlet Marissa handed me was damp with sweat. The address was downtown, maybe an hour's walk. My phone buzzed. A text from Marissa. You're no longer on our family plan. Service ends at midnight. Plan accordingly. Even my phone had an expiration date. My whole life with them had been itemized and timed out, right down to the minute. So I started walking. Last Tuesday, July 15th, everything changed. I was sitting outside the Austin Central Library, same spot as always, the one the cameras didn't cover and the guards ignored if you looked halfway decent. 3 months of shelters had taught me survival through appearance. Shower daily. Even if the water's cold, shave with those cheap disposable razors. Wash your clothes in bathroom sinks if you had to. A man in a gray suit walked up, and my stomach tightened. You learn to read people fast out here. Gray suits meant cops, detectives, or social workers, and none of them brought good news. But he moved with purpose, not authority. Like he'd been looking for me. Logan Hayes, he asked, pulling a leather wallet from his pocket. Every instinct said run. On the streets, if someone in a suit knows your name, it rarely ends well. But I was tired of running. Depends who's asking. My name's Adrian Cruz, he said, handing me a thick business card. Private investigator. He sat down right next to me on the dirty steps, not caring about his expensive suit. That alone made me pause. I've been trying to find you for 3 months, he said. Your biological father hired me years ago, but your adoption file was sealed. When you turned 18 and started using your social security number, I finally got a match. My heart started pounding. Biological father. 2 words I'd never expected to hear. Adrian swiped open a tablet and showed me a photo. This is him. Malcolm Price. I stared. My own face, 30 years older, same brown eyes, same jaw, same slight bend in the nose. Except his eyes didn't look tired, they looked alive. Determined. Behind him stood a building with Price Energy Solutions carved into the glass. Oil? I asked quietly. Adrian nodded. CEO and founder. Started with one rig, turned it into a major company. He never married. Never had other kids. Said he couldn't, not until he found you. My throat tightened. Then why'd he give me up? Adrian showed me another photo, grainy, old. A young man holding a newborn. He was 22. Your mother, Fiona Logan, died during childbirth. His parents convinced him he couldn't raise you alone. Said a married couple could give you stability. He signed the papers, but regretted it a week later. A week, I said, feeling the heat rise in my chest. He regretted it after a week, and it took him 18 years to find me? He tried to undo it immediately, Adrian said, calm but firm. But you'd already been placed. Once the court sealed the records, he couldn't reach you. He spent the next 18 years trying. Investigators, lawyers, lobbyists. Millions of dollars. Adrian opened a folder stuffed with papers. I found the Hayes 3 years ago. When Malcolm tried to contact them, they threatened to sue. Claimed harassment, filed restraining orders. They knew he was looking for you, Logan. They knew, and they never told me. The anger that hit me was white-hot, sharp, like it had been waiting years to surface. Marissa and Stanley had known. Someone had wanted me. Someone had been searching for me. And they hid it just to keep their checks coming. He was supposed to be here, Adrian said quietly. The plan was to contact you the day you turned 18, once the Hayes had no legal control. But he had a heart attack on April 9th, 2 days before your birthday. While I was stocking shelves at the auto shop, thinking about what to say to Marissa and Stanley at my birthday dinner, my father had been dying at his desk, still trying to find me. There's more, Adrian said, standing. We need to go to the lawyer's office. There are papers you have to see. Decisions to make. I laughed, though it sounded hollow. Decisions? I live in a shelter and own one pair of shoes. What kind of decisions could I possibly have? Adrian's eyes softened. Malcolm Price left everything to you. Every cent, every asset, every share of stock. You're about to become one of the richest people in Texas. I just stood there on those library steps where I'd spent months filling out job applications, being turned down by fast food places because I'd finished high school. I couldn't process it. I don't understand, I said. He didn't even know me. I could be anyone. I could be terrible. You're his son, Adrian replied. That was all that mattered. He used to say, I don't need to know him to love him. I've loved him since the day I lost him. The drive to the lawyer's office felt unreal. Adrian's car smelled like leather and coffee, clean, expensive. The air conditioner worked perfectly. The radio hummed with quiet classical music. It was nothing like the buses I used to take to interviews, sweating in borrowed shirts, praying I didn't smell like the shelter. He talked about you constantly, Adrian said as we drove past a Dallas I'd never seen before. Steel towers, trimmed hedges, luxury cars. Every meeting ended with an update on the search. Every success was measured by whether it brought him closer to you. The board used to joke that Price Oil wasn't a company. It was just his 18-year project to find Logan Hayes. Did he know anything about how I was living? I asked. He knew the Hayes were collecting state money for you, Adrian said. It tore him apart. He tried offering them 10 times what the state paid, just to make contact. They refused, said it would be harmful to your well-being. Detrimental to my well-being. Marissa had used that phrase too, her favorite shield. She'd talked about my well-being while calculating my value down to the dollar. The lawyer's office sat on the 40th floor of a glass tower I'd walked by 100 times, but never dared to enter. The elevator ride felt like being lifted out of my old life, into a world where people wore tailored clothes and carried certainty like currency. Ms. Rivera, the attorney, was waiting in a spotless conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Dallas. The city stretched endlessly below, and somewhere down there was the shelter bed that probably already belonged to someone else. Mr. Hayes, she said. For a second I almost corrected her, but stopped. That name didn't fit, but I wasn't sure which one did. Please, have a seat. We have a lot to go over. She placed a sealed envelope on the table, my father's name scrawled across the front in shaky handwriting. Your father wrote this the morning he passed, she said softly. He insisted it only be opened by you. My hands shook as I tore the seal. Inside were 3 handwritten pages and a small brass key with an address tag. The paper was covered in rushed pen strokes, like he'd written it knowing time was running out. The letter read, "My son, if you're reading this, then I didn't find you in time. But at least you've been found. Your mother, Fiona Logan, died giving birth to you. She was the love of my life. You have her smile, though you wouldn't know that. I was 22, scared, and weak. My parents told me I couldn't raise you alone. They'd already spoken to an agency and found a perfect couple who couldn't have children. I signed the papers in a haze of grief and confusion. I regretted it within a week. I had to stop reading. The words blurred together. Ms. Rivera slid a box of tissues toward me, quiet and kind. By then, you were gone, sealed behind legal walls I couldn't break. I tried everything. Lawyers, investigators, even bribing court clerks. I lost a fortune trying, but it was worth every attempt. The key opens a vault at the address below. Inside are the things I collected for you. Birthday gifts I never gave, letters I never sent, and the truth about why finding you became my life's purpose. Your mother's maiden name was Logan. I named our newest oil field after you, the Logan Reserve. It was discovered the day you would have turned 16. It's our most productive field. I built everything hoping you'd somehow hear me through it all. Every contract I signed, every deal I made, I thought, maybe this will be the one that gets me close enough to find you. I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough to keep you. I'm sorry I wasn't fast enough to reach you. But I never stopped loving you. Not for a single day. The fortune he left me wasn't an inheritance. It was 18 years of apologies, written in the only language he had left. Money. Adrian drove me to the vault's address, an unmarked warehouse in Houston's industrial district. From the outside, it looked like nothing, just concrete and rust. But inside, past 3 layers of security, I stepped into a room that stole my breath. The walls, every inch of them, were covered in proof of his search. Private investigator reports stacked to the ceiling. Age progression photos showing how he imagined me at 5, 10, 15. Every Logan Hayes in America had been tracked, documented, investigated. There were newspaper clippings, my high school's honor roll, my name circled in red ink with a note. Is this him? He'd been so close. So many times. In the center of the room stood a table. On it, 18 years of birthday presents, each wrapped, each labeled. A toy fire truck for age 4. Every boy should have a truck. A baseball glove for 9. I would have taught you to catch. A set of car keys for 16. Your first car. A Mustang. Just like your mother's. But it was the desk that broke me. Hundreds of letters, organized by year. I picked one at random. Age 13. Logan, you're 13 today. I wonder if you like science. I loved chemistry at your age, before I found oil. I hope someone's teaching you to throw a curveball. I hope someone tells you they're proud of you. I am, even from afar. He wrote about a school photo he'd bought online, said I looked serious, focused, just like your mother when she was thinking. He said the board thought he was crazy, pulling out a picture of a boy he'd never met during million-dollar meetings. But I wasn't just a picture to him. I was the reason he built it all. Adrian stood quietly by the door as I read. Year after year. A father's love, trapped in ink and paper. Then I found it, a folder labeled Failed Adoption Recovery, Hayes Family. Inside were letters, legal documents, email chains. Malcolm had found me 3 years ago. He tried to reach out, sent letters, even came to the house once. But Marissa and Stanley had shut him out with lawyers, restraining orders, and threats of harassment. There were photos of me walking to school, working at the garage, all taken from a distance. He'd been there, watching, waiting. One email from Marissa to Malcolm's lawyer was highlighted. Mr. Price's contact attempts are disruptive to our family structure. Logan is thriving in our care and does not need the confusion of a biological parent's interference. The monthly subsidies we receive are irrelevant and should not be considered motivation. Irrelevant. She'd known. She'd known everything, and kept me hidden to keep her checks coming. At the bottom of the folder was a USB drive labeled Final Message. Adrian pulled out a laptop. We pressed play. Malcolm's face filled the screen, pale, tired, determined. The date, 1 week before he died. Logan, tomorrow I'm flying to Dallas. Adrian confirmed you'll be 18, finally free from the Hayes. After 18 years, I'm going to meet my son. I've practiced what to say 1,000 times, but I'll probably just cry. I hope you can forgive a young man's cowardice. I hope we can build something from what's left. I made a reservation for your birthday, somewhere nice, with chocolate cake. I never got to see you blow out candles, but I've made 18 years of wishes. Every one of them the same. Bring my boy home. I love you, son. I'm coming for you. This time, nothing will stop me. Timestamp, 11:47 p.m. March 12th. He died 6 hours later, at his desk, plane ticket and my photo in hand. I sat in that vault surrounded by 18 years of love I never got to touch, gifts I never opened, letters I never read, and felt the full weight of everything stolen from me. Not just by Marissa and Stanley, but by fate, by time, by a heart that quit 2 days too soon. Ms. Rivera's voice broke through the silence. There's one more thing, she said softly. She showed me the numbers on a tablet. Price Energy Solutions, valued at $91 million. For mansions, a private island, Logan Island. $30 million in investments. It's all yours, Mr. Price. Mr. Price. For the first time, I had a name someone wanted me to have. I'm 19 now. CEO of an oil company I'm still learning to run. The men who once helped my father search for me are now my mentors. They tell me stories, how he'd fly to random towns on weekends, chasing leads that might lead to me. How he kept a drawer full of my photos, printed from public sites. How, after every deal, he'd ask the same question. Will this help me find my son? The mansions felt wrong at first. Too big, too quiet, too full of the ghost of a man I never met, but who loved me more than anyone ever had. I kept one. The house where Malcolm lived. His cologne still sits on the dresser. His glasses still mark a page in a book on adoption law reform, a book he'll never finish. Sometimes I sit in his study, surrounded by his notes about me, and talk to him like he's still there. I tell him about my day, about the company, about the life he built for me without ever seeing my face. The other 3 mansions didn't stay empty. They're transitional homes now, for kids aging out of foster care, for homeless teens trying to start over. The Dallas shelter where I once slept on a cot that smelled like bleach and despair now gets a check every month. Enough to make sure no one there ever goes hungry again. The director once asked why I didn't want my name on anything. I told her the truth. It's not charity when you've lived it. It's just paying a debt to the universe. Adrian still works for me, though his job's different now. He helps me find other lost kids, others like me. So far, we've reunited 12 families. Last month, we found a 17-year-old girl whose mother had been searching for 15 years. I paid for their reunion dinner. Watched from across the restaurant as they cried over untouched plates of pasta. That's what Malcolm never got, that moment. That chance to cry over birthday cake and make up for lost time. I visited Marissa and Stanley once. Only once. They'd moved to a small apartment on the wrong side of Dallas. Bars on the windows, gate always broken. Stanley worked double shifts at a hardware store. Marissa did bookkeeping at night. Without my subsidy, their carefully calculated world had collapsed. She opened the door, didn't even look surprised. We gave you what you needed, she said flatly. No, I told her. You gave me what the state paid you to give. Malcolm, a man who never met me, gave me everything else. Stanley stepped forward, voice trembling. Logan, we heard about your inheritance. We did raise you for 18 years. Maybe you could. The audacity should have made me furious. Instead, I felt nothing. Just pity. You raised me for $324,000 in subsidies, I said. By my count, you've been paid in full. And I left them there, standing in their self-made poverty, and never looked back. The private island remains untouched, exactly as Malcolm left it. A small house filled with everything he thought I might love, fishing gear, sports equipment, books on every subject. He was preparing for any version of me, ready to love whoever I turned out to be. When the weight of the company gets heavy, I go there. I sit on the dock he built, hold the fishing rod he bought me, and catch nothing. Just exist in the silence he created for us to share. Old Man Whitaker was right all those years ago. I did have oil in my blood, but not just in the literal sense. It runs deeper, in my drive, my stubbornness, my refusal to give up. Every time I sign a document as CEO, I sign it Logan Price. For him. The Malcolm Price Foster Foundation has placed 40 kids with families this year. Real families. Families who want children, not checks. We pay for everything, but the money goes into trust funds, For the kids, not the parents. I interview every family myself. I know what to ask, what lies to look for, the difference between a house and a home, between a caregiver and a parent, between obligation and love. Last week, I got a letter from one of our kids, a 7-year-old named Marcus, written in crayon. Thank you for my family. They read me stories every night. They say, I love you, even when I'm not good. They put my pictures on the wall. That letter sits on my desk beside Malcolm's final note. 2 generations of love, one lost, one found. The money doesn't erase the cold nights in shelters or the 18 years of silence. It doesn't bring back the father who loved me from a distance, who died 48 hours before he could hold me again. But it means I can make sure no child ever lives what I lived. It means Malcolm's love, 18 years in the making, still echoes. It reaches outward, finding lost children, building real families, proving what Marissa and Stanley never understood. Love isn't transactional. It isn't measured in subsidies or signatures. Love looks like a man spending 18 years and millions of dollars just to say 3 words he never got to speak. Welcome home, son. It looks like unopened birthday presents waiting in a vault, like letters written to a ghost, like hiring a detective just to stand across the street and make sure your child's alive, like building an empire so bright it becomes a beacon, hoping one day your lost child will see the light and find their way home. Malcolm Price died thinking he'd failed. He hadn't. He spent 18 years teaching me what love really is, to never stop searching, to never stop hoping, and to build something beautiful from everything that tried to break you. He showed me that real parents aren't the ones who keep you around for a paycheck. They're the ones who would give up every cent, every comfort, just to make sure you're safe. I still have his last video saved on my phone. I play it whenever I need to remind myself what love truly looks like. In it, my dad looks tired, worn down from 18 long years of searching. He's holding a plane ticket, ready to come find me. He tells me he loves me, that he's on his way, and that this time, nothing will stand in his path. Nothing but death did. But even that couldn't stop love, because love found another way. It always does. Sometimes I dream about the birthday dinner he planned for me, the chocolate cake he ordered, the candles I never got to blow out. In those dreams, he actually makes it to Dallas. We're sitting across from each other at that restaurant, 2 strangers who look like mirror images, sharing the same eyes, the same blood, the same stubborn spark of oil in our veins. He says he's sorry. I tell him I already know. And we both cry over chocolate cake that somehow tastes like forgiveness. Then I wake up, in his house, running his company, living out the dream he never got to finish, the dream of finally bringing me home. And that's when it hits me. The dream did come true, just not the way either of us planned. I'm home now, in a house built from love, in a life powered by his determination, in a future shaped by the man who never stopped believing I was worth finding. Marissa and Stanley let me go without hesitation the moment the checks stopped coming. But Malcolm, my real father, never let go, not even after his heart stopped beating. That's the difference between a transaction and a transformation, between being kept and being loved, between having a roof over your head and truly having a home. Welcome home, son. Those are the words I imagine him saying every morning. I finally made it, Dad. I finally made it home. If this story moved you, please take a second to like this video and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Your comments mean more than you know. I read every single one. And if you haven't already, subscribe for more true stories that remind us all that love always finds a way, even when it takes 18 years and comes from beyond the grave. Thank you for listening to my story.